And as I was preparing for, waiting for the software to come online today, I thought of something my grandmother used to say about moments dragging and years galloping past. And I thought just exactly that, how much while we're in the moment, we've been in the moment for these 2 days, how much information, how content rich these sessions have been. And I can only imagine the height at which this today's session will finish. What I genuinely look forward is the enthusiasm after that of starting to get our hands busy into actually setting these remarkable pieces of work together. Now, I thought about something that I know through our experience in all sorts of competitions, and I know you will recognize that, but as a comms person, just to say that I really see the benefit of the Community Research Awards so many-fold. We've seen what it means to the university. We've seen what it means to, we understand what it means to communities, but actually the wider benefit of the universities becoming known to their communities because there's a lot of discussion about what they do. And the only way to do that is through competitions. People like competitions. The human race is a competitive race. And if it weren't for a competition, they would not be striving to achieve perhaps the same or other results. So the format itself of a competition is so absolutely crucial to the content, the benefits of it, but it's not the reason why the awards exist, which is why it was so remarkable for me to be listening to all the debates about the academic outcomes and outputs of these for both the researchers themselves, but the universities, the academia themselves yesterday. I look forward to hearing more. I know all of our colleagues do. And just to let you know, my colleagues, our British Council colleagues in both Italy and Romania, know that these sessions are taking place, and they would absolutely love to see the recordings after that. So over to you, Alice and Mel.
Good morning, everybody. Lovely to see you. So we're on our final session today, and today should be a day where I think we're going to look at the toolkit that we've been working on for you and answer any last questions before you go off and adapt what we've been talking about into your own country and to make it work in your own situation. And I think it's really important to think about things we've talked about that are common across all universities: motivation of academics, competitions, how do you talk to the community, but then think about how it might work in your local situation, because every university in every country is different. I've been doing quite a lot of work in African universities with the British Council, and again, really different to any of the universities in the UK, quite different the way they approach things and the style of working. So I think it's really important that you do think about those things. What works for us might be slightly different in your country. So the toolkit. So Melanie and I have been really busy collecting together all of the paperwork that we used for our Community Research Awards and putting it together into a toolkit to help you. You might need to change it quite a bit, but it will give you a good start, I think, and some of the questions. So particularly, Mel's going to talk you through some of the key documents that we found really useful and helpful, and that helped shape our approach, such as the application forms. So today we're going to just talk a bit about the toolkit, and then Mel will take you through some of the key documents. We've shared the toolkit with you yesterday or the day before, I think, so you might have had a chance to have a quick look at it, but there's a lot in there, so we don't expect you to have seen all of it. And I think one of the really useful things of universities coming together from different countries is the opportunity for us all to talk through any questions you have. Okay, great. So just to talk about the toolkit, so this is just a very practical resource for you all to look at when you're thinking about, okay, we need to get a letter out to community groups, or okay, we need to think about how we get our panel together. So then you can look in the toolkit and have a think about how we did it and the documentation behind it and see whether it's going to help you move forward. Do you think about adapting it? Yours might be very different. Our style of writing might be quite different in different countries. I think we talked a little bit yesterday about good communication, when you're talking to your community or businesses or charities, whoever your project's going to be aimed at. And we've done quite a lot of work on this over the last 10 years about our messaging. And I think one of the problems universities have is we're much more used to talking to students and to our own academic colleagues than we are to the external world. And sometimes we forget that there's a different style of communication. So trying to think through clarity of what we're saying and how we're saying it to people is really important. I think it's easy for people to, in the external world, to misunderstand what universities are saying. So really clear messaging, very clear on why the university is doing this and what they want to get out of it. And lots of different, we found that if we just send emails out, people don't respond to them. It needs to be followed up with some social media and websites so that message gets around through our groups that we're challenging. I'll send a link through to Nico to share with you. We have an organisation in England called the National Centre for Public Engagement, which supports all universities with engaging with the outside world, and they've got lots of resources on there around how to engage through social media, how to know your audience, and they're available to everybody, so it might be worth a little flick through. So I'll send that out to you to have a look at. We use them a lot ourselves at Plymouth, and they have some really nice resources that are worth looking at, so I'll share that with you. Hopefully people find that useful. So I'll now pass over to Mel to just talk you through all the documentation that's in the toolkit, and then we'll come back and go through any questions that you might have.
So this is just a copy of the toolkit, and I was just going to go through the documents that are contained within it. So this first one here was the communication that we sent to university staff. So this was really, well, to promote the Community Research Awards to the academic community within the university, and also the opportunity to kind of build the network of community groups. So we were letting everybody know that we would be inviting community groups along to the workshop, and within that as well, there was the opportunity, if academics had a contact within a community group, that they could invite them along to the workshop as well. So it was a way also to promote or to build the network of community groups. And then the next one was the invitation that we sent to community groups. So this was obviously the main purpose of this document, was to promote the scheme to community groups and to encourage applications for the Community Research Awards. There was some further information in the letter. So the letter also included some frequently asked questions. So obviously the purpose of this document was to answer any questions that they might have, just to make the whole process a little bit clearer to them from the outset. And again, the ultimate aim to encourage applications from them. And then we also included within their letter the application form. And I'll go through this one in a bit more detail in a minute. So the purpose of this was for the community groups to be able to outline the topic or issue that they would like to be researched, and then also to be used by the university, by the researchers and academics, to determine if the application could be worked into deliverable research project. So this is sort of one of the key documents. And then so everybody was invited along to the workshop, as we mentioned. So the next document is the workshop agenda. So this is just what we covered in the workshop. Obviously, the purpose of the workshop, again, was to promote the scheme, to help build a network of community groups, to give community groups the opportunity to find out more about the Community Research Awards, and also to answer or have any questions that they might have had answered. As Alice mentioned yesterday, the workshop also included a kind of drop-in session. So if people maybe had an idea, but they weren't really sure if it was appropriate, there was the opportunity for them to discuss that and, decide whether it was right to take forward or not. And again, as Alice mentioned, the workshop obviously included a couple of useful sessions. We covered, for example, the evaluation process, writing bids and proposals. So there was some knowledge exchange going on. And again, the ultimate aim of the workshop was really to promote the scheme and obviously to encourage applications from the community groups. And then following the workshop, we produced a newsletter. So this was really just informing people kind of what happened at the workshop, how many people had gone, kind of what was discussed, and some of the feedback that we got from them. So the main purpose of this really was to share feedback, and again, just to keep that communication going with the community groups, to sort of keep the engagement process and to ultimately encourage applications from them. And then we've got the full proposal template. So this was obviously where the more detailed development of the research proposal happened. And as Alice mentioned yesterday, this one would have been kind of managed by the academic. So the academic would have been responsible for writing it, but with the liaison obviously from the community groups. And then the full proposals would have gone through the scoring process, as we mentioned. So this is just a really quick example of how we did that. So we would have had a list of all of the community research awards, and then there we've got the criteria that they were scored against and the scoring system used. So 4 for excellent, 3 for good, 2 for satisfactory, 1 for poor. And each of the panel members would have scored each application to get the total score. And then obviously from that, we would have selected the 5 sort of most successful applications to receive the funding. And then obviously we needed to let people know the outcome. So this is just the example letter that went to unsuccessful applications. So the purpose of this obviously is to inform them of the outcome. And within this, we took the opportunity to offer them some support from the university to explore kind of other potential funding that they might like, that might be useful to them. And then we've got the letter that went to successful applicants. So obviously this informed them of the outcome of their application, and also included the invitation to the award ceremony. And then within the letter to successful applicants, we also included some further details about the Community Research Award process, so kind of going forward really. So a little bit about the award ceremony, the reporting arrangements, so what our expectations were in terms of reporting, the financial arrangements, some information about press releases and intellectual property, and then the next steps. And then obviously we then had the celebration, the award ceremony. And this was obviously, this one was put together the second year that we'd run the process. So within that, we had some examples of previous winners, as well as an introduction to the current award winners. So this was just the brochure that accompanied the celebration event. So that's a real whistle-stop tour. I just thought as well, it might just be good here just to give you a reminder of the timescales that we work to. So the process that I've just talked you through really, where we kind of engage with the community groups through to the celebration and launch event, that took around 7 months. And then obviously following that, the research was actually undertaken. So I just thought we kind of identified 2 of the key documents that we felt were really important within the process. So we just thought we'd highlight these for you. So the first one was the short application form that was initially completed by the community group, and then also the frequently asked question document. So in terms of the application form, as I mentioned, that was obviously sent to the community groups alongside the letter inviting them to apply for a Community Research Award. And we gave them the opportunity to either to complete this on paper, or an online version was also available on the website. And we kept this one really short, and it was kept really simple, just to make sure it didn't create a barrier to people applying. We ensured the language was clear, and we included a word count on it, so it wasn't too time consuming for people to complete. So this kind of obviously gives people a bit of direction about what our expectations were and how much detail we wanted, but also made it really clear that it wasn't kind of overburdening them to complete it. But as well as kind of keeping it kind of short and as simple as we could, the application form obviously needed to capture important details. firstly to ensure that the community group was eligible to apply, but also to enable the community group research ideas to be matched with the academics. And as well as outlining the topic or issue that they wanted the university researchers to investigate, the application also captured details of how they felt the research would help the community group and also benefit the wider community. So we kind of captured that important information within that document as well. And then in terms of the frequently asked questions, so these were circulated to the community groups alongside the letter inviting them to apply for a community research award. And the really aim of these was to help the community groups understand the process and answer any questions that they might have. So the questions within this covered what the scheme is, how it works, the eligibility criteria, how the applications will be judged, what the key deadlines were, and how to find out more information. So by providing this sort of detail up front, we aim to answer any queries, which again should encourage people to apply and also to help kind of minimise queries coming into the university. But obviously we did, still get some queries that came in from community groups, but they mainly covered whether organisations were eligible to apply, people checking that their research idea was eligible. So, just seeing if it was really the kind of thing that would be appropriate for a community research award. And we also got a lot of people calling us just to book into the workshops, and also just people after kind of more general information really about the community research awards, just to talk it through in a bit more detail. So as we said, that was a real kind of whistle-stop tour of the toolkit and the documents that we use for the process. But we've left plenty of time with this one just to answer any more questions, because obviously we had there's quite a lot of things that came up yesterday when we talked about the whole process.
Okay, my question relates to the eligibility of expenses. What expenses do you allow to be made under your CRA grant scheme? And I didn't see in the guidelines any instruction on the eligibility of what they can pay with the money you give them, and then how do you inform and prepare them for the reporting process of the spending part of the project?
So just to be really clear, the £10,000 award, or whatever the amount is, went to the academic researchers rather than to the community groups. So
Mel, I was going to say, because it was our own money as well, it's a little bit different to if it was a project. So we could decide our own priorities for what was expenses. So the way we did it is you could claim for travel expenses, and you could claim for any equipment you might need for the research. But anything additional, like going to a conference, that was expected to come from your school or faculty. So it was that very definite kind of travel, equipment, anything and we were quite flexible. I think if it looked like a good value project that we wanted to take forward, we were quite flexible about the expenses. So we didn't have very tight criteria. If it looked like they were trying to claim more than we thought was fair, then we would challenge it and go back and say, we like the project, but we just don't feel that, the expenses are sensible. So that was the way we dealt with it. But it's a bit different. If it had been funded externally, we would have had to have much tighter criteria.
And the second question was again related to the budget. Did you instruct them on the eligibility? Did you have a separate session on the financial and reporting matters of the project, or it was just a part of the general information regarding the course of their action in the implementation? So
academics had to get it costed through our central costing team, and I don't know if it's the same in your universities, but we have a central team who cost all research funding bids. So they would have to take it to, and we briefed that team on what we would consider we would fund and what we wouldn't. So they were the ones who would be saying to them, well, under this scheme, this is what they're looking to fund, and you know that we charge you at this rate or that rate, and you can claim for train fares and petrol, but you can't claim for this. You know, you can't have flights anywhere. There wasn't much expenses because it was all in our city, so there wasn't a lot of travel. You know, and most people didn't put in for much expenses either. It was mainly staff time, research assistant.
Projects were expected to be completed locally. Actually, they were kind of geographically limited to your city.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they would need to justify why they were going outside the city, as it was supposed to be a local project.
And then Leo?
Yes, I have a question concerning the phase of the process between the workshop, the first collection of ideas after the workshop, and the writing of the full proposal. I didn't understand clearly how it worked. I mean, if I can summarize to check whether I understood correctly, you invited the community to join the workshop where you described how it works, and you invited the community to draft an idea to be submitted. Then there was a sort of screening or a pre-check of the ideas to see which ideas could fit with the different fields of research. And then there was the invitation to complete the proposal. Is that correct?
Yeah, the invitation to complete the proposal would then go to the academic who would be matched with the community.
So you invite the academic to get in touch with the community who proposed the ideas to develop together the, perfect.
Yeah.
And following this process, did you ever experience some failures in this communication between the research team and the communities? I mean, for instance, I suppose that the researchers who were available to fulfill the proposal were contacted before to check their availability, and then invited to get in touch with the community who proposed some ideas. But did ever happen that someone did not get in touch or the process failed?
Yeah, it did happen. So sometimes there was a problem that the community group, maybe the person only works on a Wednesday and the academics teaching on a Wednesday, or we had an instance where the academics suddenly won a massive research bid from the government and didn't have the time. So we did have times where the community would come back to us and say, I've not heard from the academic, or the academic came back and said, I can't get hold of them. So we would then try and step in and bring them back together. And if it wasn't working, we would either find another academic or talk to the community group about how we can make that work. So it does happen. And it's something to keep an eye out for. And I think the other thing to think about is time scales. It took quite a long time to get these, longer than we expected, to get them moving, because whilst we'd been through the process and then we'd agreed the winning projects, it still seemed to take quite a long time to get the academic having enough time to do the work and meeting with the community group. So it's not a fast process. You need to be quite patient and to map that into your timescales for this project.
I have a second question, but it's for Nico, actually.
Oh, good.
No, but I think it could be useful, hopefully, for everyone, because concerning your question about the eligibility criteria, shouldn't we follow the criteria of the reporting of the project itself? I mean, are not I think we are in a way obliged to report using the kind of structure that the Erasmus Plus proposed. Is that correct?
Yes, that is basically correct, but it also depends on the formal way we are going to give the money to the recipient.
Okay.
We have three different legislations: Romanian, Italian, and Bulgarian. So we have to stick to the accountancy rules in each country. In our case, in Bulgaria, we are facing the situation, well, we'll think on it. It's still not clear to us whether we will make contracts, personal contracts with the leaders of those teams, or will it be any other form of spending the money following the formal legal framework in our country.
So you mean, okay, no, it's clear. You mean, for instance, if I can pay the research of one specific team, I have to develop a contract with researchers or with the university. That's the point.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Thank you.
It depends on your local situation, and it is also a matter of further discussion. Actually, this is one of the steps we have to pass before actually launching the program. If we talk about application forms, selection procedures, etc., more or less we have a clear picture of it. What bothers us is how to spend the money in a lawful, following the formal rules, because it's a kind of, we cannot re-grant. We are not a granting body, so we have to find the legal form to give the money to a person or to a group of persons represented by one of them. So
okay, fine.
In general, the rules are as we heard that were applied in Plymouth. It's money for research, possibly buying literature, possibly covering a fee. I think there was a question in the chat about conference fees, possibly covering a fee for them to take part in an event or present the results of their work, possibly some materials if they need to print and publish something, that kind of stuff, more soft measures than infrastructure, but it's natural because we don't have much money. And another issue we discussed today with my colleagues is that we will try, I mean, in the case of Sofia, to find some additional donors, possibly from business, possibly from other funding sources, to add something to those small pilot grants, if possible. At least we can try.
Yeah, one of, if I may add a small thing and asking to the colleagues from Plymouth, one of the requests from UniverCity was, or the comments from the University of Perugia, for instance, was, well, we usually experience the difficulties to fundraising even for small projects with, for instance, local bank foundations. And when I say small budget, I mean 20,000 euros or between 20 and 30,000 euros. Okay, so they were really concerned about the idea of presenting a proper research project based on a smaller budget. That is the kind of range that Nico was talking about. So what would be your suggestion in order to make a very small budget appealing for researchers?
I think that's a good point, but I think what we said to our researchers was that it's a pilot project. We're looking for small, short projects of research that might lead to something bigger. So we didn't expect them to do a large scale piece of research that might last for several years. We're looking for something fairly short, ideally 9 months around that time, and to try out an idea that would be useful for the community. So they needed to cost it, and quite a few of them used research assistants to do a lot of the work, and they just oversaw it. So it was good experience for maybe somebody who's just finished their PhD or just at the beginning of their career. So they might have done a lot of the work with somebody more senior overseeing it. So that was the way we talked about it. And I know it's different in different countries, but the money didn't seem to be an issue. People wanted to have a go at it. I think time was an issue for our academics. They're very busy, same as your universities. They teach, they do research. They're asked to do quite a lot of other things. So I think that was, trying to fit it in was difficult, but some of them are really keen to do it. So I think that's the way to sell it back to them, is about being very small, first step in a new research area.
Sorry, the very last question and very last. Would you recommend to strongly involve early career researchers like the PhD students in their first year to experience sort of dialogue with citizens or communities in a very short time?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to start developing their career and start getting a culture of working with the community into our early career researchers. So that first taste of working with the community, I think, has changed the way some of our researchers who've stayed with us think about their research careers. So I think it's a great way to kind of develop them quite quickly. And most of them seem really keen to work on it as well.
The next questions I'd like to ask you is, shall we use a national language for preparation of the application form, or we will use normally English?
Well, Albena asked a good question whether we can make it in English only. One of the benefits of having English as the language of the proposal is that we can invite participants from the other partner organizations to be members of our evaluation board, of the selection board for the project.
Yes.
Yeah,
I completely agree. I mean, if I can comment on this, given the fact that we are aiming at very local communities that in some cases, at least in Italy, have some issues with the English, or I'm not sure about the level of English of the people we are going to get in touch with. I would rather use the local language, in this case Italian, to make it as open as possible and as accessible as possible, and then asking either to our team or to the researchers to translate into English in order to be shared with the rest of the project. But it seems that the main goal is the local community.
Another thing, just on the money side, we kept a little bit of money back for any unexpected expenditure, and I don't know whether that's something that you'd be able to do, but we found that really useful. So whilst we would pay for conferences and people could put that into their budget for us, what happened a couple of times was when they went to the conference, they wanted to take somebody from the community group with them, which they hadn't realised that would be something that would happen. So they actually presented with the community group at some of the policy conferences for the government. So we had a little extra money that we could pay for that community group to go, because they wouldn't be able to afford to pay for themselves. So we did keep a little bit of money back for some of those really unusual impacts that we hadn't expected. So that was something that we learned. The first year we didn't do that, and it was quite difficult for us to find the funding. But the second year we made sure we had a little bit of money for unusual outcomes, I suppose. In England, I've seen people universities ask their ex-students or alumni for funding for projects, community-based projects, research, and that's worked quite well, or use crowdfunder as well for community-based research. So there are different models that you can use. I mean, sometimes businesses support us, but generally they tend to think that in the UK, universities have enough money without them giving us some, so we don't always get very much from them, but our government gives us quite generous funding for this, so it's a bit different. But there are different ways you could try and find extra funding. We get funding at the university from Santander Bank. We find them good funders for us, so they fund all our entrepreneurship activity. So we have relationships with some of the big banks as well, who support students to do research in the community. So we do have some different models as well, where we've looked at just bringing extra money to allow us to do some of the non-teaching activities at the university. And I think that will depend on how it works in your university and your culture of how academics ask for money for research. We found that the principal academic didn't expect the money. They did it in their own free time, but it was a good opportunity for more junior academics. Leo.
Yeah, sorry for this rain of questions, but I'm thinking about the community and period after the project. How would you really motivate and engage the community after the project has finished, or just not just by sharing the results, but giving the results a relevance in the community? I'll give you an example. Over the past years, we sometimes did what we call the science parliament, for instance. So we invited students or other citizens to design recommendations for policymakers on some issues based on evidences. So a sort of evidence-based policy making. And the main frustration came when, after long discussions and long reflections, no impact was there. So good ideas came up, but there was not any real implementation of the result. So the basic question is how to avoid frustrations in the community.
I think that's a good question. I mean, we asked our academics to think about this, and some were more used to this style of working than others. So we did ask them that they reported back to the community group and produced a report that wasn't a traditional academic study, but was written in a style that's very accessible for the community and short and to the point about the findings and the research and what the next steps were. We also try to use our links with our city council or policymakers to try and link the community group in on it. And we tried to go back to the community group ourselves if there's been any impact. So, for example, the piece of research around how we support children with a father in prison, that piece of research went on for a couple of years, and we kept feeding it back to the community group. So they felt like they had started this big piece of research. And when policy changed nationally, we kind of fed that back to them, so they felt they were part of something bigger. So we did try and keep that going, but it's difficult when it's a short-term project because people move on to other jobs. And we did the same, you know, we went on to the next scheme, we started doing something else. So we've tried to keep a little bit of contact with them. But we also made sure that they were aware of anything we could do as a university. So it wasn't just about the research, but we said, did you know that you can use some of our rooms on campus for free because you're a community group? If you need to use a room, you're very welcome. You do come to some of our events. We run events for the community group. Come to any of our lectures that are open. So we try to just keep that connection going. So it's a positive experience, I think. And when we did the evaluation, we went back to people. People did say it had been positive to have a closer relationship with the university. And we had some unexpected outputs where people said, my grandson wasn't going to go to university, but I started talking about the work I was doing, and then he applied and he's come to your university. And we were, oh, that's lovely that somebody who wouldn't have gone to university has now come to us. And, you know, that's great. That warmth between the community and us, and maybe reaching out to communities does work.
Would you recommend to include this as a criteria in the selection? I mean, as an extra criteria to ask the submittant to clearly describe the way they will follow up after the end or at the end of the research project with the community? I mean, there is an impact item on the application, and it's okay, but to make even more visible the part of the impact related to the continuity of the actions with the community.
I think it would be a good thing to do. I think what we constantly struggle with is we want to put quite a lot on the application because we're interested in these things, but we don't want to put the academics off. So we tried not to make it too difficult. And I wonder whether a better way might be to make the application simple, but then as they get going, start saying, have you started to think about how you're going to do this? So maybe it's about balancing what you ask, because I know our academics complain if we give them really long application forms to fill out for not very much money. So we tried. As a researcher, I would have put a lot of questions, and my background's evaluation, so I would have put lots and lots of questions in, but we tried to make it as easy as possible. I think once you've done it once and you know what the enthusiasm amongst your academics is going to be, then you could probably decide whether to put more questions in future. But maybe the first time, keep it quite simple to make sure you cut the barriers down and then go from there.
Thanks.
So it's been, again, lovely to think through this, and we're learning as we go along with you, really, about how it might work in your situation, in your countries, in different universities. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this works in different countries. We'll be interested to see, and hope, fingers crossed, maybe next year we can come and talk to you face to face and find out more about how it's working. We've shared all the documentation, and Nico's doing a great job of making sure that all gets out to you so you can have a look at it. I think now we've talked about it in more detail. If you go back to some of our project examples we talked about on the first day, which seems ages ago now, but back on Tuesday when we talked about some of our project examples, I think they'll make more sense to you now we've talked through how it works and you can see some examples of the projects. And I think thinking through those project ideas, the sorts of projects you want to work with, is going to be really important. What we try to avoid is letting the community come up with projects that there was just no way our academics would do. So we're just trying to all the time think, let's not disappoint them. Let's try and make this work. So we look forward to seeing how it goes from here.
If I have to sum up my impressions from the sessions, obviously we'll face serious work, because we cannot copy what you have done. We cannot do an exact copy of your program. We have to stick first to the Erasmus Plus rules. Second, we have to comply with the with our national background. So we have to think over the financial design of the awards. One important thing. And another, which in our country is a weak point, we have to focus on clear and brief messages to the communities and academics. Usually this is an element that is neglected here in Bulgaria. We have procedures, we have lengthy rules. I speak about project making, but we do not have efficient ways to communicate with the target groups. So there is a lot of work that is wasted after the whole process is ended, because there is the communication between the target group and the policy maker or the grant operator is often missing. And this was one important message I got from your presentation, and from the previous sessions also. You said clear, concise, and comprehensive messages. Find a simple way to communicate with your audience. This is often neglected. This is usually here regarded as a topical phrase in all presentations, but it's not only a topical phrase, it's a very important practical part of the implementation of a program or a project. So for me, this is one of the most important things of this is a red flag for me to pay attention to, and not to make the mistakes we usually make here. Maybe it's not the same in Italy and in Romania, but for me, for sure, this is one of the main obstacles we will face.
To link to something Nico said earlier about adapting, the great benefit, the great beauty of this particular project is that there is no license, no intellectual license around the setup of the awards, and that means that they are adaptable, and that local solutions will be addressing real life, real world problems of local environment, and that is genuinely really valuable. And the second important matter that Nico, again, stemming out of what you said about communication, actually communication skills is an acknowledged deficit in academia in all of our countries, which is something we've been trying to work on for the past years anyway. But I do believe, and you would be amazed how different it is. There is a huge difference between where we are in communication at academic institutions than 15 years ago. So it's a much better place. And I'm absolutely certain that the UniverCity will demonstrate that. There are communications experts around as well. Very happy to jump in and help to make sure that clarity, conciseness, and relatability is there in your communications. If we were in the same room physically, this is the moment when we would have offered our huge round of applause to both Mel and Alice.
Thank you. It's been lovely to work with you, and we're so excited to see what you do with this project and how you adapt it in your own countries. It's going to be really interesting, and it will become like a European, different projects in different places. I think it's going to be quite exciting. So we look forward to all your hard work ahead and being able to watch from England how you're getting on.
Definitely.
So thank you very much, everybody. It's been lovely to meet you. And
yeah, lovely to meet you.
Good luck. We wish you luck. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Bye, everybody.
Have a nice
Bye.
day to you all.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.